This is PIX on Politics Daily with Dan Mannarino.
Happy Monday, everybody. It is April 28th. Hopefully everybody had a fantastic weekend. Welcome to Pop Daily, PIX on Politics Daily. I'm your host, Dan Mannarino, where we talk about all of the hot button issues happening in the tri-state area on the daily basis right here on PIX 11 Plus. So let's talk about what's happening in Albany right now. Of course, the budget is late. No surprise there, as the governor and the leaders in Albany continue their negotiations around what's holding it up, right? There's the dangerousness clause. There's a lot of things around discovery law, things like that. We're going to talk to State Senator John Liu about that. Plus, we're also going to talk about this big issue right here, the Citi Field Casino. I say issue because there's one state senator who wants it to happen, or a number of people who want it to happen, and then one state senator who says no way, and it's her district. So let's talk about what this means over at Citi Field and what it looks like moving forward. State Senator John Liu is part of that discussion. So great to have you here.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. It is Monday. I don't know if it's happy, but
well, Monday. Yeah, it is Monday, and I know you're there in Albany. You're continuing those negotiations for the budget, but I want to talk about the casino, right? Because we had Jessica Ramos on. She's also a candidate for mayor, and she was very adamant about this not happening, saying she spoke to constituents, she spoke to a number of people who said it's going to destroy local businesses and things like that. From reading about this, it seemed like you were kind of against it at first and then said, sure, it sounds like a pretty good idea if we get this Skyway, right? Can you walk me through your position along the way here?
Yeah, sure. Look, I have been very clear over the years that I'm not a big fan of gambling, casinos, lotteries, whatever form it takes. But the reality is that it does seem like 3 casinos are coming to the New York City area, whether it be all in New York City or possibly in Westchester County and in Long Island, although that one I think has fallen by the wayside. Yeah. So there are 3 casinos coming, and wherever they are, there are going to be some harmful effects, and we need to deal with the reality of gambling addiction. But if they are all going to be in New York City, I think my community wants to be able to benefit from all of the development, not necessarily the casinos themselves, but the huge amount of development that would go around the casino. And the owner of the Mets, Steve Cohen, he's got one of the proposals that he'd like to put forth to the State Gaming Commission. And in order to do that, he needed state legislation in order for him to use what is technically parkland, even though it's been a big parking lot for decades now. That is the legislation that Senator Ramos is opposed to. I work very closely with Senator Ramos. I understand where she's coming from. I have a different view, and so I'm putting forth the legislation, and it should be coming up before the legislature for consideration shortly.
Yeah, so it's interesting when you say parkland, right? Because everyone refers to this as parkland, but it is just this concrete jungle of a parking lot, and it's 50 acres. So, there was some confusion along the way if a single state senator who represents a specific area could actually stop it from happening. And since Jessica Ramos represents this area and she's a no vote, are you saying because you also are included in this and are putting forth legislation, it can move forward?
I do represent a part of the area, although Jessica has much more of the area in question. I think the idea of a single legislator having total power over what's happening in the district, that kind of notion applies more towards projects that are truly local. Yeah. A project of this magnitude, of course, has impact and ramifications far beyond the district. And so whatever proposal there would deeply affect my district, as well as the rest of Queens and New York City, for that matter. So when it comes to these larger issues, the legislature takes a more broad view of these.
Yeah. So can you walk me through what kind of you had a caveat in your proposal where you were saying like that you wanted this Flushing Sky Park to be part of a reality, and that is this High Line-like structure that would connect. What areas would it connect? It's Flushing Creek connecting downtown Flushing
and Willits Point.
Yeah. So, and it would add a bicycle bridge, this High Line beautiful walkway. Now, do you think that's a reality? And is Steve Cohen the guy that can make that happen?
Well, let me say that as I said before, any casino in the New York City area is going to have some potential harm to my constituents as well as to other New Yorkers. And I think we need to make sure that there is mitigation in terms of gambling addiction. Look, I don't like gambling, but we don't prohibit alcohol. I don't drink alcohol. I
Yeah.
don't smoke either. I'm not trying to be a Boy Scout here, but the reality is that people like to do some of these things. And so we shouldn't ban them, but we should at least make sure there's mitigating factors and resources. And when it comes to the impact on my area of New York City, Flushing, that this particular mega project would bring, I just want to make sure that my constituents have some great things that come out of it also. This Flushing Sky Park, what you just described would be just that. It would finally create this connection between Flushing and the western part of Queens that has long been, there's been a long time barrier to this, which is the Flushing River. And this Sky Park would not only be a way for people to get to and from both sides, but it would actually be a destination unto itself, just like the High Line now is a destination.
What have you heard from constituents, right? Because I know you talk to them quite often about this. Are they for it? Are they against it? Are they mixed?
For the most part, my constituents are in favor of this, but there are some people who are against it. And again, I have to weigh what is for the long-term future and what's best for my constituents as a whole. You had also mentioned whether the Sky Park is a reality. It is not a reality. It's been contemplated for 20 years.
Yeah.
It's not going to be easy. But you did mention Steve Cohen, and I think if anybody can get this done, Steve Cohen's team will be able to get it done. And if they can't get it done,
Why? Because they have the money?
then they have promised. I'm sorry.
Why can they get it done?
They seem to be very focused on achieving their goal. And I've seen many of the people that work on their team. To complete the Flushing Sky Park, you have a mess of regulatory, financial, environmental hurdles that need to be overcome and achieved. And so it is a difficult project, no question.
Yeah.
But Steve Cohen also has promised in hard legal writing that if this Sky Park is not completed, then he will be on the hook for $100 million of donations to build up Flushing Meadow Park.
Yeah.
Flushing Meadows Corona Park.
Gotcha. Okay. And I think another important part that you keep highlighting are these mitigating factors to some of the dangers that come with a casino. Have you gotten that commitment from the Cohens that they would have some of those things and provide some of those resources?
Yeah, they already had some. They already had made commitments. That is a commitment not only imposed on the Cohen team,
right,
but the state also has to provide resources. And we're also looking in the state budget, which we're, I guess, talking about, to increase the amount of resources that go towards gambling addiction.
Okay, so let's talk about the state budget for a moment. Where the heck is it?
Yes. It is here. It is here in Albany. It's not on our desks ready to be voted on. Many of the major issues have been resolved between the legislature, the two houses, as well as the governor. But there are still a number of smaller issues that need to be ironed out. And then there's the matter of the financial impact that the federal government and all its changes are going to have on the state budget, which is basically havoc.
So what were some of the big sticking points? Obviously, changing some of the laws surrounding discovery. I know that's a big push here in New York City for that. Was that a sticking point?
That was one of the earlier sticking points. The governor made very clear what her position was. State legislators, including myself, we heard from our constituents and some of the people we've been working with for many years. And there is a compromise that will allow judges to have more involvement, and we want to see a decrease in the number of cases that are dismissed simply on technicalities.
Right, and so you got that?
Yes.
Okay, and you know, this was a big push from Governor Kathy Hochul, and it was this ban of cell phones in schools, bell to bell. People have to turn their phones in at the beginning of the day. They pick them up at the end of the day, and this has kind of been happening around the country. Parents are like, well, I'd want my kid to have their phone somewhat in case they have an emergency. So how did this kind of come to be? Because it seems like a big win for the governor. Were you on board with it?
Yes, I was. This was one of the proposals from Governor Hochul that I did support. I don't think anybody can dispute the harm that these mobile devices have on students during school. Teachers can't teach, students aren't learning, they're distracted. And not only that, there's a huge amount of bullying going on online. Yeah. So it's just, we really, I take the teachers' opinions, professional opinions, that getting these mobile devices out of the school day will be far better for the students themselves. And there have been lots of studies that have shown that schools that ban the use of these devices during the school day, their students wind up loving it 6 months later. They hate it the first 6 months, but they love it 6 months later. Yeah. And so what we're doing is making this statewide policy. There were some wrinkles to iron out, such as, for example, there are, believe it or not, students who are caregivers for the rest of their family. Right. Those kinds of students need to have access to their phones. And then there's a couple of other reasons why there needs to be continued access even during the school day. But for the most part, the governor's proposal of a bell-to-bell ban on cell phones in schools is the right way to go. And I believe that is where we'll end up.
Could you help me understand something? This may seem like a silly question, but I think some folks may have trouble understanding it. Why does that issue fall under the budget?
Well, that's a great question. That is a great question. It has no fiscal impact whatsoever, nor did the discovery issue that you and I just spoke about a minute ago. The way it works is that the New York State budget, like any other state budget or a federal budget for that matter, is a piece of legislation or a combination of pieces of legislation. And as a piece of legislation, any other pieces of legislation, including bills that affect only policy without having any fiscal impact, they can be thrown in and merged into kind of a larger bill. So this budget is now this ginormous bill that includes not only taxes and revenues and expenditures and budgetary items, but it includes a host, like literally dozens of these public policy measures that really have no fiscal impact whatsoever. But because of the way the legislative process works, this is how it gets done. The budget is just one ginormous bill. And it's not New York. It's not unique to New York. Every other state and the federal government does this also.
Well, because it's all part of the negotiating tactics too, right? I'll support this if I can get this in.
Yes, that's right. And during the budget process, the governor definitely has the upper hand because she's able to insert these bills, and then ultimately, at the end of the day, we as legislators have to vote up or down on these measures. And if we vote no, then that means she doesn't get what she needs in policy, but then our schools don't get their money.
Right.
It's a tough position to be in.
It certainly is, but it's expected this week, right? Finish line is near.
The finish line is near, yes. Near depends on who you're asking, but I'm confident that we will get it done. But look, even though we are a couple of weeks late, there has been no impact to how state government works. There's been no cuts in services. People are getting what they need in state government.
Good. That's important to know. State Senator John Liu, always good to talk to you, my friend. Thanks for coming on.
Same here, Dan. Thanks.
Okay. And so we will, of course, be talking to Governor Hochul later this week as well. So we're focused on the budget. We're going to bring you more information on that in that interview when we have it. But that's going to do it for us right now on PIX and Politics Daily. Don't forget, everybody, important dates to register to vote both in New York and New Jersey. You can find all the things in our voter guide on PIX11.com. But in the meantime, Dan Mannarino, have a great rest of your day.